Ladies and gentlemen, it's been about a week since the last HSR analysis, and that means that I've put a fair bit of time into trying to come up with a decent tier list. As we can see on the screen here, we're looking at the HSR tier list today. I've put about a week's worth of thought into this, but you also may look at this and be like, how many categories are we looking here? 3 categories? What do you mean? Because I'm not going to be the guy who has the super high in-depth one, because I don't think that getting started into the game requires that large amount of depth. Going into this tier list, I've got 3 categories. We've got game-changing characters for the ST category, essentially meaning that this character is fundamentally going to alter how you view the game, going to alter how you play the game, and going to alter the raw innate value of your account drastically, right? That's what ST means. These characters, once you get them, no matter how you use them, they're going to be a bonus, right? That is S tier. A tier means just a good character, right? You can't go wrong with them. They're not going to be exceptional. You know, they're not going to be these ride or die characters, but they are going to be good, right? They're going to get the job done. Whatever path they are, they're going to get that job done. And then B, easily replaceable. This one is, it kind of makes sense. They lack something. They don't have something in them that is letting them go higher. It could be raw value is fairly low. It could be just their kit is unsynergistic. They could also just be a flat out just bad character. So something along those lines. That's what B means. Easily replaceable is the last one. And yeah, that is the 3 categories. Because you could do higher depth and get to better, judging of which character is better. But then listen, the tier list video is going to be like 30 minutes long. I don't feel like doing that. I want a quick and snappy tier list video because that's kind of like the general vibe of a tier list. You want to just get a quick know of what's what, right? You don't want to sit here for 3 hours analyzing it, but I will be slightly analyzing the characters just as a brief overview of what they do. So with that kind of out of the way, let's get into it. Starting off with Mr. Arlen right here. Mr. Arlen himself. Now, Arlen's not a terrible character. He's a Destruction Lightning, meaning he's AoE and single target. And he's built around the concept of sacrificing some HP to then deal more damage. And the lower HP is, the more damage he'll deal. There's a bit of fewer mechanics like in regards to enemy HP and his HP. He deals more damage. He has, a bit of resistance here and there. And restores a bit of HP through some methods. He's kind of okay. Arlen is not like this. He falls into like the obvious category. He's like the generic unit. But there are some parts of him that I think can be really bad. And it's that low HP part of him that's really bad, at least in this game style of turn-based. Because the only other character that I know that does a lot of low HP stuff is Hu Tiao from Genshin Impact. But the only difference there is that one of them is an action combat game where damage taken is a player skill thing, whilst in turn-based games it can be quite hard to control like all variables unless you know the fight inside and out, right? So it's hard to recommend Arlen. He sits in between A and B, right? Because of that fact, he could be easily replaceable with any other DPS unit because he could be dying a lot. I'm going to put him in the A slot because I do think he's a solid unit. But he could drop down to B easily if, he just dies too frequently. Especially once you get into the high content, he's just going to drop out immediately. Maybe not even the highest in content, but just decently high in content. He could drop out immediately because just dying, being at low HP, is not an overly enticing and endearing factor to a character. But that's Arlen, solid A unit. On to Asta next. Now, Asta, listen, I think there's a lot of talk about how Asta's not good, and to be quite frank with you, she's not. If I take a look at my notes here, I wrote down 50 ult speed boost, which to be quite frank, that is quite good, right? She does give you a solid 50 speed just from her ultimate, but that's all it does for 2 turns, so it's not terrible, but I wouldn't classify it as overly incredible, because I think some characters do more with less, or like do the exact same thing with less, but that's fine. She also has a tedious 5-stack bonus thing, or a 5-stack counter, which is her talent, right? She gains charge attacks every time she hits an enemy, and plus an additional stack if the enemy has a fire weakness. So she has stack management. The only difficult part about this is that she loses charges very easily, but at the start of every turn, pretty much, she loses charges. So if you can't get to max charges at the end of her turn, then you're just going to lose charges, so on and so forth. And it's just kind of tedious. It does get made easier with her constellation eidolon things. Like, you lose less, you gain more, but it's still a very tedious mechanic to do. As well, she's very niche in terms of her damage boosting. It's fire damage from one of her traces. That's not very diverse. And I don't believe there's an overly large amount of fire characters in the game right now. I think there's like, I don't know how to check, but like there's like 4 fire characters in the game right now. So I don't know, you can't even make a full team of them. I believe, right? It's 4 or 5 characters per team. You can't even make a full team of them. So it's like, it's rather tough to kind of do that right now. I have just fire damage boosting, but you know, that's all really she does. It's just the tediousness, everything combo like that. She kind of just does fall into the easily replaceable tier. Once you get any other speed booster, you're probably going to be better off because they'll either have some sort of damage on it or also just more speed. Pretty simple like that. Bailu, it's the easiest character kind of to put into S tier. She's the best healer in the game. Easily, like, let's be real right now, easily the best healer in the game. Bailu doesn't, no one else comes close. Luocha, nobody. Bailu has single target heals, she has AoE heals, she has dot heals, a outgoing healing bonus, less damage from characters that are being healed by the healing over time, more triggers, the whole fucking 9 mile bullshit. She revive enemies, or sorry, revive characters, deal more damage with some eidolons. Like, there's a lot of shit. I'm obviously taking eidolons into consideration to an extent. She has a lot of shit. The enemies will not be able to kill your guys. Is the simple matter of the fact. Once you have this character built up to a decent degree, you have all talents leveled up. She's not letting the people die. It's simple as that. She goes into S tier, no question. Next we got Bronya. Bronya, again, another very, very easy S tier. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Very good buffer. She does her job to the T. Bronya is a buffer. Harmony. Offensive buffing character. That's what harmony means. I'm like 80% sure. It could actually be defensive. I can't even remember these definitions anymore. But offensive buffer, I'm going to go with that one for now. Action forwarding. She essentially, when she uses her skill, and an ally's action will be advanced forward. Dispelling debuffs, increasing damage of all allies through the ultimate, increasing crit damage, plus more crit damage, advancing her own actions. All allies deal 10% more damage when she's just present, so it's kind of crazy. Defense increase, attack increase, or rather, sorry, a crit rate increase on her attacks by 100%. It's like the whole fucking shebang, and then through her ultimate, or rather eidolons, and you subsequently more in ultimates, rather, you get speed increases and wind weaknesses. She just does buffing to the highest degree, and I'd say she's easily the top 1 or top 2 buffers in the game. I have to like kind of think about which other one. I think Ting Yun can come close, I believe, but Bronya, the best buffer so far. Next, we're going to Clara. Looking at my notes here, I did say that she's a good character, right? Savarog and counter-based damage. She's built around the concept of countering. So she gets hit, and then she hits someone back, right? Boom, boom, right? You have to get hit to hit back. So that sounds like a bit of a good thing, right? Because it's like, oh, I can deal damage based on them and then me. Which means that you can technically have like 5 turns in one if she's the only character on the field. But then again, that's like a risky thing. But it also has a bit of a drawback, is that it limits your build potential. And if she, for some reason, through some methods, just gets targeted and dies, now you're left without a tank, because she kind of fills the tank role. She's not a tank. She's not a preservation character. She's I believe a single target character. She's a hunt, or a destruction, I believe. Sorry, destruction. But she kind of fills the role of a preservation because she has aggro generation. And having aggro generation on her is very good because you want her to do that. And obviously, if you combo with some characters like shielders, that would be very good. Like March 7th, that would be a fine thing. But again, it's still like you're altering your team fundamentally to you have to now try to make a non-tank a tank. Other than that, it's just because she's a counter-based damage. It's kind of hard to consistently use her. The consistency is another problem. Most likely, I have no fucking proof. I don't know why I'm acting like I have proof of that. I can imagine the consistency is the problem, because if the enemies don't hit her, she doesn't deal damage, right? So I'm gonna put her in A because she's not gonna. She alters the way you play the game. That is true game changer. She alters the way you play, but it could be at the cost of like literally efficiency and like actual power because if she don't get hit, she don't do damage. That's that. Now, the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Heng. Man goes straight into 2, but he's probably very bottom 2 here. I wouldn't rate this guy highly. Reason for it, his slow application and slow-based damage, right? He applies slow to the enemies, and then he deals more damage to them if they have slow on them. So it's kind of intuitive, kind of nice. There it is. That's all he does, really. Like, I don't know what to say. That's kind of all he does, really. I did say wind res penetration. That's useful. Penetrating a resistance. That's great, I guess. And also his E6s apparently are pretty good. There you have it. He doesn't go any higher than that because he's just like a unit. He's kind of like just getting a like an auto attack Andy in Genshin Impact or some shit like that, right? Just getting a character who swings. It's kind of like, all right, fair enough. Like I'm not complaining, but I'm not fucking blowing my mind about this. So he stays into the A tier. Now we have Mr. Jeepard or Gepard or Jeepard, right? Depending on how you say it, depending on what region you're in. This guy's kind of like, I want to put him high. I really do, but I'm just unsure how much tanking you need in HSR. It's a thing that you'll have to gauge once the game launches, but I want to put him in A tier, or S tier rather. Sorry, S tier. Because he's going to be the best tank in the game, like purely from a reduction value of helping the team and providing shields and also self-damage reduction. He's going to be the best there because he's, I think, the only S tier, or rather, 5-star. That's the one. They do 5-star. The only 5-star guy that's a preservation, I believe. I don't think anyone else here is preservation from the 5-star category. So he's going to be the best there. But he also has a few extra niche mechanics, like freezing. You can get to the point where you have 100% freeze on him if you build him for effect hit rate, which is kind of his build. His signature light cone does have effect hit rate on it, so if you do have that, he's going to be very good for freezing. And it's just freeze-based damage. He's the tank. So I do want to put him in S tier, but the only reason he dropped down to A tier is if fundamentally tanks aren't overly useful. But I do believe they are quite handy to have. Now, on to Herder. Now, for this one, I'm going to come back into Mr. Pridewin here, because Herder is a bit of an interesting one, and interesting means terrible. She's kind of like tough. She's tough. I just use the word tough time to describe her. But she's just kind of overall... it doesn't feel like she's overall, like, here, present in the day to kind of be doing shit. Her talent is very niche. It's very finicky. When an ally causes an enemy's HP to fall to 50% of their max HP or lower, you trigger a follow-up attack. So essentially the character doesn't do shit for the first 50% of the fight, and then she does decent damage with her ultimate, and so on and so forth. She's an opener really as well, because she has, where is it now? Is it through an Eidolon or is it through a talent? I think it's this one. Damage boost effect on her skill on enemies with high HP increases by an additional 25%, dealing more damage to higher HP enemies, I believe. So it's like, she's finicky in terms of where she's effective, because you have some early HP, late HP things, and then you have some early HP things, and damage dealt to frozen enemies. It's very finicky, and also just the value itself of the raw abilities, seeing as her skill is at 110, the same damage value as her auto attack. It's kind of hard to recommend when I see that kind of percentage. So Herder does lie between the A and B. I would say she is B. You get a Gepard, you immediately replace her, and you pretty much get like any other 4-star, you can kind of easily replace her. Maybe not Sampo, but you know, that's for when we get to Sampo. Next one, Himiko. Well, here we go. Himiko is literally, I think, the definition of the solid unit, right? She is that definition. And she probably goes to the front of the solid unit category. The reason is because, easiest analogy I can use, I use it in the Himiko analysis video, and I'll use it here. She's the D-Luke of Genshin Impact. At the very start of the game's lifetime, she'll be very powerful, very strong. Not exceptionally, right? Because she's just fucking fire, and she's just damage. That's all she really does. Nothing really game-changing there. The values are pretty decent, I'd say. If you're looking for a pure value, like in terms of damage, she could probably go to S tier. But nothing else really there. she's a solid one. She does fire damage. Where is she on this list? AoE fire damage, weakness break. She's weakness break dependent. Like, that's part of her light cone. No, not a light cone. One of her, like, traces, I believe. We can even go into the character if we really wanted to. I don't really feel like doing this one because she's kind of standard. She has a weakness break talent, meaning you have to constantly weakness break it, so she's not even good for bosses. Only good for AoE. What's another thing? She has crit rate boost at high HP, E1 speed boost, E2 conflict executioner opener, right? Solid 2 unit, right? Because she has an opening thing and an execute thing. It's kind of handy to have, right? Having both execute abilities and opening abilities, right? Meaning you deal more damage at, you know, higher HP to the enemies, and then execute meaning at lower, right? Himiko's HP increased crit rate, so it's solid. I wouldn't say anything here is game changing, to be quite frank with you. It's like, it's teetering on game changing, teetering, but not quite. I wouldn't say not quite. Next, we're looking at Hook. Now, Hook is a burn applicator and also based around burn. And then consistent energy regeneration, E4 and E6, burn, more burn application and damage increase. Burn. If you're dealing burn damage, she's great, right? If you want to be centered around burn, she can go to like S tier if you really wanted her to. She really could. Like, I don't see why not. Also, if you're going for a dot build, there are a few characters in the game who are centered around dot builds, but obviously, if you're not going for that, she's not going to be that great. I would put her just solid A, solid unit rather. But if you're going for a specific build, she could very easily pop up to S tier, just dependent, because some characters are very dependent on dots. Like Kafka, she's very dependent on dots and having more and more dots. Same thing with Silverwolf, and I think there's one other one, I think it's Sampo, that are dot dependent. So she could vary. I'm going to put her in a solid A position because, and I think I'm going to put her like higher than Arlan as well. I'll do that kind of tier list. G-Hub just screaming at me. Thanks so much, G-Hub. I'll put her above Arlan, below Himiko. Thanks, G-Hub, again. Really appreciate that one. Just there because I think that's where she sits. Now on to the man, the myth, the legend. The man voiced by Alejandro. Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan is by far the easiest goddamn game changer. Actually, no, Bailu's easier. Bailu's a lot easier to put into that tier, right? We're going to put Bailu at the front, but Jing Yuan is right behind. Jing Yuan is an absolute monster on the battlefield in terms of raw damage throughput. Doesn't really matter single target or AoE. He does high on both. And that's because solely he has the Lightning Lord mechanic. Now, what did I write here? I pretty much just referenced the Lightning Lord mechanic like 5 times. But Lightning Lord, he essentially summons an extra unit. You don't control it. You don't control it. It's an auto attack unit that will then, when his turn comes in, he'll just deal AoE damage to everyone. Not your allies, rather, to every enemy. He'll just deal AoE damage to all of them, dependent on some stacks that you build up through using Jing Yuan's skill and ultimate. He'll gain stacks, right? It sounds very simple, but the value of it is rather high, because you got 2 units. They're both counting as 1. End of story, really. That's kind of all he does. He has a few other broken parts. He's like, E6 is very broken. Obviously, it's in E6, but it is a very broken E6. You make the enemies vulnerable. Every attack count, Lightning Lord makes enemies vulnerable, taking more damage, up to 36%. It's strong. Go watch the analysis if you want a super in-depth thing about the actual characters. This is kind of a small overview. But crit damage boosting, crit rate boosting, a lot of boosting, and also it's just the Lightning Lord mechanic that kind of puts him there. It's because the value is so high. So he's solid S tier for AoE clearing, and I would say he's like an S- for single target. That's kind of, he's still like, I think if we look at Prideone's DPS rankings here, I think Prideone actually like in AoE, Jing Yuan's at the top, but even in single target, Jing Yuan is 4th. So, get Jing Yuan, boys, get Jing Yuan. Now, Kafka, the main villain, I believe, of this first part of the game. When the game launches, I think she's the main villain. And Kafka, she's like, again, she's a variable like Hook because it depends on what team composition you run. If we're judging the unit by herself, she goes into A tier, right? If we're judging it just by herself, she goes into A tier. But obviously, you kind of have to sometimes judge units in their like specific comp. And in that specific comp, which is dot builds, as I mentioned earlier, she's a dot character. She's heavily dependent on dots, and her mechanic is like popping the dots before they actually pop. because dots trigger at the start of every character's turn. If a character has freeze, at the start of their turn, they'll take freeze damage, right? That's how their turn, or how the damage works. She can kind of like hit the guy and trigger all dots on the character after she's hit the guy, right? So I've just punched in front of the mic like twice. Sorry, my apologies. She can trigger them like very early. And it's a very good mechanic if, and only if, she's in a dot team. And a dot team is something like Hook, Kafka, Sampo, some other motherfucker that applies dots, like, I don't know, who applies dots here? Gepard? Gepard? I don't know. But she's very specific to that kind of comp, right? So running her outside of that, she can kind of carry by herself if you have Eidolons, because she gets a lot of, I believe, a lot of lightning application or shock application through Eidolons. But I just don't think you really want to try to run her by herself in like some sort of weird, just crit damage team, right? I think you do really want to run her in a dot team. I wouldn't recommend it. So she stays in A because you need to run a specific team, much like Hook and Clara. If you need to run a specific team for them, I'm just going to leave them in A. That does kind of make it sound like game-changing, but I'm talking about the unit itself being game-changing. Now, for the Auto Apocalypso. Auto Apocalypse goes into S tier. Is easily the second best healer in the game. Very, very comfortably. But he's also a different type of healer to Bailu. Now, Bailu, as I said before, is the strongest healer, and I wholeheartedly agree that. But Luocha, or Luoka, or however the fuck you say it, nobody fucking knows, is kind of just different. He has like some sort of emergency heal mechanic. He has a lot of single target healing. He has dispelling. He has, what else does he have? Energy regen, remove debuffs from the target ally. So he has a lot of dispelling. But the thing that I mentioned earlier is he has like a backup heal. He like gets 3 stacks of Abyss Flower and deploys it on the field. And then when the enemy is on the field, attacked by an ally, the ally will restore. So it's kind of like this passive healing based on healing done and stacks gained. It's kind of just like a lot of healing for not really much actually doing. You don't really do much, but you get a lot of in return. So he's like another easy game-changing character, in my opinion. It's not really an argument, I don't think. He's definitely not better than Bailu, though. So he's currently, I'd very easily put him at the bottom of the ST category. On to our dear March 7th. March 7th is a tank. And for that, she's very useful if you do not get a tank other than her. Because obviously you get March 7th for free, I believe, as just a start of the game character. I think she can easily make her way into A, and she doesn't go anywhere below that. Now, you can argue that she does go up to S tier in some situations. If you like build a very specific thing, and it's like around the Clara composition, and you build some things like that, that's where Clara would also jump up with March 7th, because Mrs. March 7th has a specific mechanic of when she shields an enemy, or sorry, an ally. I keep on saying enemy. It slides off the tongue a lot easier, apparently. When you shield an ally, that ally now has a shield as well as aggro generation. And it's a very kind of good thing to have, even if you have to run 2 tanks, because it means that one tank will have extremely high aggro generation and thus be able to take all the hits, right? And so if you can do that with certain comps like Clara, Gepard, whoever else needs to get hit a lot. I think there's another character that needs to get hit. One of these motherfuckers down here. I think it's the Fire Trailblazer. If you do that with that, then you'll obviously have a good time, and you can easily argue that March 7th is S tier. But I'm going to leave her as a high end. Let me actually switch a few of these characters around. I think Arlen is not that high, and Kafka is above Hook. Let's go with that hierarchy of the A tier, right? Okay. I think that's where she sits. These two can be argued to go higher depending on certain things, but for now, I think singly they kind of fit in the A tier slot. Now, next one, Natasha. Natasha goes into the A tier. She's just the healer. She just heals and heals and heals. That's about it. That's really about it. She just heals. In terms of raw healing throughput, it's arguable for her to go to S tier, but she doesn't really provide anything other than that, really. Realistically, she's a dot and AoE healer, can 0 to 100 allies, which is a very good thing. She also has a cleanse. E2 applies a dot. Or rather, is it a dot or a hot? Because I honestly, I misspell those two all the time. So let me just double check that. E2 applies a continuous healing, so I did mean hot. I just wanted to double check that because I am moderately brain damaged. and she's just a healer. Very easy to argue her going up to ST in terms of raw healing throughput, but she really doesn't provide much else other than that. So I'm going to put her like kind of in between some of these characters here. Definitely above Arlan, I'll be honest with you. Definitely above Arlan. Let's go with right after Arlan though. I wouldn't, if I got a Clara or a Natasha, I'd be a little bit more excited about the Clara. So we'll leave it at that. That's really all she does though, is just heal, heal, heal. She does have like some physical damaging at her E6, but it's like, didn't really need that, did I? Didn't really need that. I want some damage boosting or some damage mitigation. Pilar or Pella or Pilar. I'm not exactly sure. Pella. It's like a pretty terrible unit. Like it's kind of like bottom A, top B, somewhere like that. Somewhere like here. She's a bit of a what does she do? Well, she removes debuffs, inflicts exposed debuff, which is a defense decrease, which that in itself does put her in like a solid unit, by the way. The unique debuff of exposed with her ultimate, you just reduce the enemy's defense flat for 2 turns, which is actually extremely useful. So, you know, that's the reason she goes here. More toughness damage, a lot of energy regen, does many things, excels at none. And that's kind of the motto that I think goes with Pella. She does a lot of things, I would say. She has exposed, she can freeze, I believe, lowering more defense, using skill removes a debuff from her, but debuffs the enemies to deal more damage, effect hit rate increase. You'll notice a lot of, now she increases her own speed, she more toughness with the ultimate, ice damage when enemies are debuffed. A lot of different things. I wouldn't call any of them extremely high value except the exposed debuff. Really, realistically, it's just not it. And also, she's an agility, but she has like damage increase. It's just not really there. It's just not really there because a lot of the damage increase goes onto her, and she's not a DPS unit by the god's definition. So it's kind of like teetering here. The exposed debuff is good, so I'm just gonna give her a solid A unit, because the exposed thing is very good. But listen, one other guy gets the exposed debuff, boom, right into the goddamn B tier. But for now, we'll leave her at the bottom of the A tier. Qingxu, I believe it's how it's said. Oh, what a tragic, tragic character. In my analysis of this character, I did kind of make it seem like she was going to be okay, but in hindsight, I didn't really understand how much RNG this character really fundamentally and mathematically does have. The character is so RNG dependent to actually get any value. You're kind of constantly rolling the dice to see if you'll get, 4 matching tiles and then actually be able to deal any amount of damage. Now, it should also be said, though, that when she is doing her damage, she's at the top of the A tier, arguably into S tier, right? Because she is I believe, a Nihility character. Also, we can, where is she? There she is. There she is. She is a Nihility character. Erudition, sorry, my apologies. Jesus Christ, Erudition. And a lot of AoE damage can come from this character. But if it's at the cost of RNG and if I have to sit here rolling dice constantly, what do I do? What do I do if I can't get the 4 matching tiles? So it's just impossible to recommend her. Impossible. Any RNG involved in the character fundamentally in their playstyle is just an unnecessary variable. So she just sits in the B tier easily. Mr. Sampo is the next one. So this guy has a cool mechanic. I don't think it's going to actually be intuitive or interactable. He has a ricochet mechanic where you throw one thing and it deals damage to multiple guys or it bounces between them randomly. So it's kind of a cool mechanic. I put this guy right solid 2, which is means A tier. He's just a guy, really. That's all he does. He has some wind shear, and dot damage increase. So if you combo him again with the dot characters, you'll be able to make a nasty team. Wind shear applicator and values are a bit too low, though, right? That's kind of what I've written for him. Now, as for his values, that's kind of probably negligible with his actual character because I believe he is actually Nihility, and not that character lady. He is actually Nihility, so he's a support. So you can easily put him here, but I would say you only really are able to make him work with dot characters, get Hook, get Kafka, get Sampo, because of that, kind of like that, the synergy thing, and the dot more dot damage taken, like dot procs and whatnot. So you need to run him with the dot build. And with that, I'm going to kind of like shift the dot characters to the high end of A tier, because I think these characters are S tier in my opinion. The dot characters are S tier, but it's just that some of them are dependent on dots. For example, you know, something like Hook, you apply a lot of dots, so then you would be good with other dot characters that buff dot damage. But then Kafka by herself, she doesn't apply dots too frequently, but when she does, she can make them proccable. So once you combo them, they all move up to S tier, but without them comboed, they kind of are in A tier. So that's kind of that. On to Sealy. Now, Sealy is one of the top 2 strongest single target damage dealers and can easily make her way right behind Jing Yuan. She just literally, that's all she does. I'm not going to try to beat around the bush with her description. She only does damage and does it fast and does it frequently, right? She has a speed increase, action forwarding, she has damage increase to herself, as well as just raw damage. That's all she does. Everything. Now you might be wondering, how is that game changing? How is that going to alter your account? Well, it's because she does it so much. It's such high value of a single character that it's impossible to not recommend. It's impossible not to. She does it to such a high degree that if I didn't recommend it, I'd be a fucking idiot. So that's the recommendation for this. She's an SD character because she does it to such a high degree. Serval is an AoE damage with a shock chance, shock echo damage, shock, just shock, really. That's what I wrote for her. That's my message. She shocks. Dot character, she does shock. So you could easily put her right here with the other dot characters. She does have a cool echo mechanic that I just want to point out. I think it's going to be, I do like echo mechanics in games. Which one is it? After attacks, deal additional damage to Serval, of Serval's something to shocked enemies. Which I do like shock, sorry, not shock. I said shock too many times. I'm having a stroke right now. Holy crap. I do believe that she is good, and I do like echo mechanics. She's definitely a 2 in terms of being a solid unit. We'll put her here, maybe after Himiko, because I don't think she's as useful in terms of the dot team as the other 3, but she's still useful in terms of the dot team. But then again, you are just going for shock, and Kafka already does shock, so you may want to go into a different dot character there. Next one, the next S tier character, Silver Wolf. Silver Wolf is actually like I think the definition of a game-changing character, as she can like literally change how the game operates. Now, what does that mean? We have to look at her kit just to kind of explain that. And realistically, what it means is that she has a mechanic to allow you to do different things to different enemies. Essentially, if an enemy is not weak to fire, and you have a fire character in your team, Silver Wolf can make that enemy weak to fire through her skill. You know, she has a base chance to add 1 weakness of the same type as a random ally's attack type on the enemy that lasts for 3 turns, and then reduce it by reduce the damage resistance of that type by 20%. She literally can add a weakness to the enemy. That is the definition of game changing. And apart from that, she has a lot of other debuffs and a lot of other machinations. She also has her own damage, which is pretty high, to be quite frank with you. It's single target damage, so it is decently high. So she kind of has the whole shebang. She has the whole trifecta of being a character in the support range, I believe, because she's an agility. She has the debuff, she has the different types of debuffs, and she also has a fair bit of damage to go alongside it. She's the definition of a game-changing character. Next one, Su Shang. Su Shang is a unit on, in HSR as well as in Honkai Impact, she's a lovely character. I do love myself a little bit of a Su Shang. Great personality. She's an ST. Sorry, yeah, I didn't put that in there. She's an ST. She's a great single target character. Alongside Sealy, she's going to be one of the top contenders for single target damage, depending on what the enemies are weak to. So I'm going to put her right there next to Sealy. Because, well, again, you can, Pridewin, again, did a damage rankings or DPS rankings. She's right there. This also gives you a hint. Yang Qing is also S tier. But yeah, it's that easy. Now, where does she compare here? Not that great in terms of the hierarchy, but it is what it is. What can you do? You can't win them all. But she does go safely into S tier for being just very strong. It's centered around what I write here. The damage is centered around action forwarding, kind of like Sealy, and a lot of self-attack increasing, speed increasing, more break effect increase, as well as more speed, right? So kind of like Sealy, in terms of like what you'd expect from a single target, but she has a bit more variation in her eidolons, and it's not to the same percentage increase. Next character, Ting Yun. Now, Ting Yun is a lovely fox lady, and what I wrote for her here is this: damage buffer / adder. Now, the adder part means that she just adds a raw amount of damage to certain attacks that you deal. She also gives energy. The ultimate is probably the weirdest part about her, I'll be honest. I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it's like, I think the first time I've seen this type of ultimate, but her ultimate just gives energy and increases damage. Now, the increased damage part is obviously understandable, but just giving energy, so you sacrifice some energy to then give energy, which kind of does make sense if you need to use the character's ultimate really quickly, and because your energy is not dependent on your skill points. It's kind of interesting, but it's like, I've just never seen it before. A character can just give energy, but regardless, that's what it does, and it's very, very useful. The damage bonus and the damage boosting of Ting Yun is extremely powerful, and she does... What number did I give her here? I gave her a 1 to 2, which essentially means S to A tier, right? I kind of can see her being an S tier character, and kind of like I did with Su Shang, I'm going to put her in S, but it's going to be right behind Bronya, because she kind of does what Bronya does, just Bronya does it better. But I do believe that they both are still valued as S characters, just because the damage boosting is super high. And that's all it is. The damage boosting, fucking incredibly high. So, no matter which one you get, you're going to get more damage. Just know that Bronya is slightly better than Ting Yun. Simple as that. Now onto the Trailblazers. These ones are kind of, you're going to get them both at E6, so it doesn't really matter which one you go. But for the Fire Trailblazer, it's arguable to be an A tier to S tier unit, but it's going to be high A, bottom S. I'm going to leave it at a top S. And then the male Physical Trailblazer is kind of like teetering on bottom A, top B. I'm going to put him like safely kind of at bottom B, just because, bottom A, because he does deal damage to a decent degree. But he doesn't do anything other than that, and the damage is like decent at best. So you will replace him easily, which is the reason he's teetering on the edge of being bottom A, top B. But for the sake of you actually being able to guarantee him E6, because he's the Traveler, or the Trailblazer, I'm gonna leave him at there. And then obviously E6 with the male, or the female one, the Fire one, will go up to here, if you didn't presume, because she's very good. Arguably a top contender for being the better preservation, maybe better than Gepard in terms of some things, but that's a conversation for another time. Very good characters, but the physical one does fall behind the fire one substantially. And down to our last two characters, Mr. Welt. Now, Mr. Welt, I want to say this. I know a lot of people say that he's an S tier character, but I think it needs to be said that he's an S tier sometimes. Sometimes he's an S tier. I think he's great, and he's the only character right now that provides major slowing, right, to the enemies. Applies major slowing. There are other characters that apply slowing, like Dan Heng, but Welt obviously does it better. And for that, he's in the S tier. He also has turn pushback order thingy-majiggy. He can push the enemies back in the turn order, which is extremely important and extremely crucial, and slowing of the enemies to a major degree. It's like very high. It's like 40% slowing. It's fucking crazy. But so he goes there. But slowing is kind of everything that he does. And so once another character, I can see it very imminently in the future happening, when another character that does slowing as well as a bit of damage boosting, he'll overtake Welt. For now, I think Welt is in the S tier. Where would I put him? I think I'd put him, because he offers slow to such a high degree right now, it'd be kind of like middle of the pack. Let's say like just after the buffers. I would argue that getting the enemies slowed is slightly more important than buffing your own guys. But yeah, let's put him right there. He just doesn't do anything other than that. He just slows super well. Kind of like Sealy, where she does damage super well. He just slows super well. That's kind of all it is. And last character, we got Mr. Yan Qing. I believe that's his name, right? Let me hold up. Did I get the name wrong? No. Mr. Yang Qing. The best single target damage dealer in my opinion. I'm going to put him above Sealy. I know a lot of people take that as like a hot take. But I do believe he is. He's a lot better in terms of being like universally kind of acceptable. Also building wise. Also a higher damage potential. Reason for this is because of his general kit allows for him to buff crit rate and crit damage at the same time innately, so you can have a lot more build leniency with his artifacts, or relic sets rather, and also his light cones. God damn it, I'm getting all the names wrong. It lets him have a lot more build variety and a lot more leniency, but if you do get a perfect build on him, I do believe that it'll be a lot higher than Sealy, as the damage difference between them in Pridewind's test was like, what, 0.8% difference? So, and this is all with a very niche build and very, very specific things, and there's a lot of parts that weren't utilized with him, so he's better, in my opinion. He's just better. And this is the tier list, boys. This is the tier list. I wanted this video to be short, but it's impossible to do a tier list and make it short. This is where I think every character lies. Now, for those who did skip to the end just to see the final results, welcome. Hope you guys have a great day and are enjoying the video. This is where I think everyone lies. The ST units, as I said, these guys can change the way you play the game fundamentally. Either from literally changing the gameplay like Silverwolf does to adding weaknesses to the enemy, or they are just super powerful units in their job, right? They just do their job extremely well. They buff, they deal damage, they tank, they do something. Whatever their job is, their path rather, they just do it to a high degree, right? Those are the two kind of like criterias for game changing, is they do their job high degree. A units, solid units. You can't really go wrong with them. The lower you are in the A units like section though, the worse you are, to be quite frank with you. That's kind of how it works with these guys. The lower you are, like Pella and the physical Trailblazer could be removed and could be chucked in the bin, to be quite frank with you, if you wanted to. But they're not terrible units to have. You know, you will. It's not a detriment. It's not a detriment. And then the B, easily replaceable. These characters, one of them is a detriment, to be quite frank with you. The other two, not so much. Ching. I can't remember her name. This lady, Mrs. This one, she's a detriment to have. RNG based, but the other two just aren't high enough value to kind of be up above. You get anything else, replace these three characters. Unless you obviously love them, then do whatever the fuck you want. I'm not going to try to boss you around. But this is my tier list. Does this mean anything? Absolutely fucking not. Listen, don't take this tier list like too seriously. I just, after doing an analysis, I wanted to do a tier list about the characters and kind of gauge where I would put them. Take what you want from this tier list. If you think this is accurate, go for it. If you don't think this is accurate, fuck, I don't care. It's a moderately useful one to some degree, obviously. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the space or some shit wherever Trailblazer anime game is set. Fuck. See you boys. Peace out.